Becoming an Angel of Hell. Yeah, I love the introduction to it in the announcements or on the website about tonight. So I just want to introduce Aryavacin. He doesn't need any introduction on Sangha night, but it's hard not to look at him. Look at this. I keep doing this. This can't do it. Yeah, Aryavacin, when he gets into something, he gets into something. And well, the Dharma is one. Yeah. Yeah, he's a very, very sincere practitioner of the Dharma, I would say. But also, he's really hooked onto Blake in a big way for years now. He takes people on pilgrimages to London, to Blake's grave. I think Zach has been transported to that yeah, recently. Yeah, but I just love your inspiration and enthusiasm for Blake. And you've given over the years, each year you do 1 or 2 talks, 1 or 2 evenings on Blake. And tonight, a different one again. But what I like is that you really are diving deeper into it, delving deeper and understanding it more and more. I remember when you did your first, you felt like you didn't quite know what you were talking about. So, you did when you didn't. And it's like that, isn't it? It's like that with the Dharma, or whenever you, or with anything that you explore and study, you go over it and deeper into it, and it becomes more, it makes more sense. And I think that's, well, I look forward to some sense tonight. Go well.
Can you hear me well? The people online? I don't know. I'm equally confused as Kemasiri was saying what to look at. I think I just want to acknowledge the people that are connected online, but I'm probably going to be speaking mostly to the people in the room. And but I'm not trying to ignore you. Just it's good to have a focus when you're speaking. And I think Kemasiri is right, actually. I think I still feel like when I go into Blake, I feel like I still feel like I don't know what I'm talking about. And but I really like something that Sangharákshita says, that one finds what is that one wants to do or has to do or must do in the process of doing it. So it's an organic process. It's something that evolves, I suppose. And every year, as Kemasiri just reminded us, I try to make something about Blake, especially around these dates, because we celebrate the birthday of Blake at the end of in November. So what I'm going to share with you is the latest development of that exploration. And in the process, the title of the talk is trying to point at a process, something organic. It's becoming, I think, is a key word there, the active word, the becoming. And I'm going to say something else about the title, but originally my intention was to talk a bit more about how much Blake has shaped the way Bhante Sangharákshita decided to create Triratna for the West. But the most I went into this talk, I realized that I have less and less to say about Bhante and more about Blake. Yeah, so I'm going to mention Bhante as well, but it's going to be mostly about Blake. So, and the title is, I mean, I can give you a very general idea. It's I don't want to direct you too much tonight. Yeah? I want to evoke things and see how that plays for you in this process. But in the Buddhist tradition, you probably have come across the wheel of life, and the wheel of life is divided into realms. Yeah? And one of those realms is hell. And when you see the depictions of the hell realm, you see a lot of suffering. So sometimes it's very, very vividly, very graphically depicted. All the tortures and all the suffering in the hell realm. And one way of reading that wheel of life is portraying our minds. Yeah. So we all have an experience of hell. Probably literal hell in the sense of being in those places that are hellish, in our world, in our societies, in our civilization, or mental, hell. And the interesting thing in the Buddhist tradition is that it's a bit like, in the Buddhist tradition, sometimes things are turned around. Yeah? And hell is, of all the realms, is where there are most Buddha seeds. Yeah? So the human realm has a good amount of Buddha seeds, but hell is where there are more possibilities for that awakening. Yeah? So sometimes people talk about being from the world or not, but not of it. Yeah? And I would like to change that as well a bit. So it's an angel, becoming an angel of hell. Yeah? So making the most of those Buddha seeds that are there in that space. But the imagery of hell that I want to evoke tonight is not the traditional imagery that we have come across. Probably for most of us in the West, I know that some people don't have necessarily a Christian background, yeah, but for most of us in the West, we have a Christian background, and that the association that we have with hell is usually the Christian depiction of hell. Yeah. And Blake, this English poet that I actually met Blake when I arrived in Nottingham. So Blake, in a way, has been a gate into my life in Nottingham. Yeah. And I'm going to say a bit more about that in a moment. But Blake, something that Blake did was playing with all those images, Christian images, and then he he gave his own reading of the Bible, yeah, his own interpretation of the Bible. And that's very in line with what Bhante, the way Bhante looks at other traditions, especially the Christian traditions. When there's a very beautiful talk from Bhante called The Archetypal Symbolism in the Life of the Buddha. And he makes parallels between the life of the Buddha, or particular episodes in the life of the Buddha, especially around the night of awakening, and certain passages in the Bible. So the Bible can be read as a book of myth. Yeah. So one of the problems with the spiritual life is that there's sometimes, there's a very strong tendency in us to fall into literalism. Yeah. So dogmas of faith. In Buddhism, we don't have dogmas of faith. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. I got a journey of a few slides to take you in, and a song to take you. So I don't think we're going to have groups tonight. But why Blake? Why Blake? So Bhante, when he came to the West, he was trying to look into the opportunity of creating a new Buddhist movement. Yeah? So he didn't want to just to bring a version of Buddhism from the East, yeah, from the many different teachers that he had encountered. And one of the tasks that he took upon himself was that of looking into the Western tradition, yeah, and looking for people that have a certain level of attainment, if you want, development of consciousness, if you want. And Blake is a very interesting character. There's a scholar called Foster Damon that calls Blake the Columbus of the Psyche. Yeah? So 100 years before Freud and Jung, Blake was already looking very deeply into his the deeper meaning of the human consciousness. So Foster Damon is a scholar of Blake, and he put together a Blakean dictionary. It's very used in scholastic scholar circles when people are studying Blake. And he says these psychic forces were so real that he, Blake, had to name them, hence arouse a special mythology for these forces were living creatures. We probably can relate to that. And the way the mythology that emerged is very complex. Yeah, I'm going to give you a bit of a glimpse into that mythology tonight, but it's very layered and it's very complex. And what I really enjoy about Blake is that I have met, in my exploration of Blake in the last 5 years, I have met people from many different walks of life, and they have many different ways of entering that mythology. Yeah. But I'm going to be also borrowing from other personalities, other characters. So Jung said, well, famously said, the psyche is image. And we're going to be looking at some images in a moment. But he refers to a particular period after he broke. You know, you probably know, all of you know that this relationship between Freud and Jung. Yeah. And assuming a lot of things here tonight, assuming that you don't need introduction to Blake, that you probably have known, you know, who Carl Jung and Freud are. And I'm talking about psychology, so I'm talking about psychotherapy, you know, I'm talking about all that, and I'm talking about a character that I believe is a very emblematic English poet. Yeah? But if you don't know who they are, don't worry, just let's listen to their voices. Yeah? So Jung say about that particular period after breaking the relationship with Freud, and this is a man who is breaking that relationship with his mentor. Yeah. And that's a very central, and it has a spiritual connotation, that relationship. Yeah? He says, to the extent that I managed to translate my emotions into images, that is to say, to find the images that were concealed in the emotions, I was inwardly calm and reassured. Yeah? So he experienced a very turbulent period. You know, he was having nightmares, and so he was trying to find out how to work with that. But this is very interesting what he says next. Had I left those images hidden in the emotions, I must have been torn into pieces by them. So it's a very interesting process. We need to, in a way, this is a journey that all of us need to undertake. There is a hidden meaning in our emotions. And the Buddhist tradition is very good in that sense. You know, we have a plethora. We have a pantheon of entities, deities, you know, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that can represent those hidden meanings in our emotions. Yeah? And yeah, I'm going to give an example later on as well. Blake said, if the spectator could enter into these images in his imagination, approaching them on the fiery chariot of his contemplative thought, if he could make a friend and companion of one of these images of wonder, then will he arise from his grave. Then will he meet the Lord in the air, and then he will be happy. So it's interesting because something that we say, that we teach here at the Buddhist Center, is that happiness comes from within. Yeah? And that probably, you know, it's not what we experience most of the time. Yeah? What we experience most of the time is that when we are alone with our experience, we are unhappy, we are restless, yeah? We are unsatisfied. We need to go to something outside our experience to calm down. Yeah? But Blake is offering us a different path, very similar to the path that the Buddha himself offered. Yeah? So it's an inward looking. Yeah? And this idea of I really like that image of the fiery chariot of his or her contemplative thought. Yeah? Made me think of another important poet, a local one, D.H. Lawrence. He wrote this very beautiful poem called Thought. Okay? So we are not talking here necessarily of the rational mind. We're talking about thought in a particular way. And he says, D.H. Lawrence says, thought, I love thought, but not the jiggling and twisting of already existing ideas. I despise that self-important game. Thought is the welling up of unknown life into consciousness. Thought is the testing of statements on the touchstone of the conscience. Thought is gazing onto the face of life and reading what can be read. Thought is pondering over experience and coming to a conclusion. Thought is not a trick or an exercise or a set of dodges. Thought is a man in his wholeness, wholly attendant. So that's the flavor of thought here. So it's not thinking necessarily a rational, conceptual, abstract idea. It's wholly attending with your whole being. It's a quality of awareness, mindfulness, if you want. Okay, so let's go into this journey. And I think what I'm going to do is just, we put up, probably you cannot see it online, but we put up the screen in the shrine because I really wanted for the people in the shrine to have a full experience of these images. So what I'm going to do is just going to turn this light off here. I'm going to be in semi-darkness on this side of the building. And then whenever Zach is ready, I would like to take you into this journey, and we're going to be showing, those of you connecting online are going to be able to see that in your screens as well. Just keep an eye on time. Okay, thank you very much. So this is a kind of experience that probably we are used to. This division. Division. These two are the angels of good and evil, struggling for the possession of a child. So the child can be said that the child is our potential in a way. The child is that what is pure in us. And we have these two tendencies that we usually name them after we have learned a kind of conventional morality. So we are told what is good and what is bad or what is evil. And there is a conflict between us, between those two forces. And what we learn in our families, in schools, in society, is that the good angel should prevail all the time. That's what we learn. Can we move to the next one? But what Blake says, I hope the people in the, you can see the writing at the bottom. What Blake says is active evil is better than passive good. So Blake was a big advocate of energy. Energy has been a very important force that we need to, in a way, we need to pursue energy. We need to cherish energy. So the good sometimes in our society is pretty much fitting into a very particular set of norms and rules, where creativity doesn't have a space. So being normal, for example, is a conventional way of talking. It can be more than that. It can be a real obsession for some people. A real source of anxiety, of not fully accepting themselves because they cannot quite fit into the molds of society. So Blake is inviting us to identify, rather than identify with what society tells us we should be or do, identify with that seems subversive, yeah? that seems to be against the conventional morality in society. And it's nothing in particular, yeah? It's something, in a way, we need to find that. And probably you know what is that already, yeah? in your own life, in your own journeys. What is that? What is that? What is your energy? Where your energy lies? What are the sources of creativity in your life? So I want to introduce you to this. I always, when I talk to Blake, about Blake, the next one, please. I just don't talk about Blake, but I talk about Blake and Catherine. Yeah? So we have portraits of the two of them. So they were a couple, husband and wife. And though Blake was the engraver, the painter, the poet, you know, the mystic, even the prophet, some say, Catherine, his wife, was a very important partner in that creative process. So many of the illuminated works created by Blake were a co-creation. Catherine was very involved in that, you know, in the coloring, for example. There are not two works the same produced by Blake and Catherine, because they color their prints by hand. It's a very interesting process. I'm not going to say much more about that, but I'm going to show you this, something that Kemasiri was referring to in her introduction. The next slide, please. So this is a very important place for me. This is in Bong Hill Fields. Bong Hill Fields, a graveyard in East London. So which way are you looking? So the stone to the left is a memorial stone that has been there for many, many years. And that is usually, if you look at the top of that stone, you can see tea lights and small offerings. Yeah? So that is a place of pilgrimage for many people. And whenever I go to London, I make a point of going to Bong Hill Fields and pay my respects to Blake and leave an offering in that particular stone. And the one to the right is a stone that was recently unveiled that marks the precise place where Blake's remains are. But you can see also at the top of that picture some offerings to Blake. So it's a very interesting theme. Graveyards in the UK are usually, they're more like parks, really. But this place is very important to me because people go there and make an offering. Yeah? So it's alive. It's alive for people. Yeah? And it's people, as I said before, people from all walks of life. So there is a particular bunch of people that I want to show you in the next slide. So you probably can see there's some familiar faces. So this is a group, this is one of those pilgrimages that Kemasiri was referring to. So this was, we went together and did a little pilgrimage just before the pandemic, a few weeks before the pandemic started, at the beginning of 2020. And we went to the Tate Britain to look at the latest exhibition on Blake. You can see Jyoti and Kemasiri and Richard and many others there. Okay, the next one. So this is one of the first images that I want to show you. So this is the sun at the Adaster Gate. What Blake is getting at is trying to really get at the heart of what humanity, real humanity is. So he says that the poetic genius is a true man, and that the body or outward form of man is derived from the poetic genius. Likewise, that the forms of all things are derived from their genius, which by the ancients was called an angel and a spirit and demon. Yeah. So Blake was ahead of his time and against of his time as well. You know, Blake lived in the times of Newton, Locke, yeah, in the time where science was emerging, as the main force shaping the public discourse. And Blake was, in a way, he was moving away from that tendency and really trying to look into what is that, that is really human. Next one, please. So Blake identify deities, God, what is holy, what is sacred, in humanity itself, not outside humanity. Yeah. All deities reside in the human breast. That's a line from the Marriage of Heaven and Hell. And that's a very beautiful illustration, Queen Catherine's dream. Yeah. And in a way is that, so many possibilities in each of us, so many possibilities, unlimited. The next one, brother. And this is a very important image to me. In a way, this image represents primordial purity. Yeah. So that's that baby that we saw at the beginning could be this image. Yeah. So awakening. Yeah. The image is called Albion Rose, or Glad Day. And it's just that sense, it's awakening to life, awakening to light. Yeah. And I like that image in particular because it seems to me that it has the colors of all the 5 Buddhas in it. So it's an image of integration of all those myths, those Buddhist images. We're going to see this again later on tonight. But in the next one, in the email that was sent around, I decided to use this image. And this image is called Satan in his original glory. Yeah. So again, what we are going to be looking at now is this narrative that Blake does of the Bible. Yeah. So Satan, as with Milton, Satan was a good angel. Yeah, he was a sort of a heroic character that has fallen in disgrace. And it seems to imply this is a moment of Satan sort of falling in disgrace, and it seems to imply that iniquity, the accumulation of wealth, if you want, you can see how much adorned Satan is. Was a sin that Satan committed. Yeah. The next one, brother. And then again, the division, division between those two forces, God and the angels, the rebel angels. Yeah. So this painting is called "The Casting of the Rebel Angels into Hell." Yeah. And it's interesting because, in a way, this God is very white. Is surrounded of that light. Is devoid of the energy of the flames. Yeah? If you see the angels at the bottom are contorted and moving. And I mean, I don't want to say much about the images, just let you be with them, yeah, and see what emerges for you. And that godlike figure that arises just brings order, yeah, order into the rebellion. And that, in the mythology of Blake, that godlike figure is called Urizen. Yeah. So it's like an old, white-bearded man, and is holding the rolls of the law, the rules, the commandments. Is bringing order, but with order brings death as well. Obedience, shadows. There is no the light of the flames is no longer around. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that those forces have completely disappeared. Those forces still exist, but in a different form. They are not angels anymore. So this is a series of paintings that I really like. Four different paintings, and they are the Red Dragon paintings. There are two in particular in this series. That is this, we're going to see both of them tonight, is these two opposite forces. So this one is called the Red Dragon and the Woman Clothed in Sun. And probably you can see the woman at the bottom of the painting. Yeah. These forces take different shapes and forms. So this is another of those demons, sort of deformed beings. Yeah? You can see that bit that is almost human, but it has sort of a tail coming out of his bottom. Yeah? And this also is an example of Blake's illuminated works. So that's Blake handwriting there at the bottom of the image, and that's one of his engravings. So he will produce an engraving in a metal plate, and then with that metal plate will print a page like this, and then between him and Catherine will color that plate. That's one. And I love this one. This is another one of those from the Red Dragon. I like something I really like about this image is the symmetry between those two poles of. Yeah. And again, this is the great Red Dragon and the woman clothed in sun. But you see that they don't quite manage to get together. Yeah, there's a tension there. Yeah? There's a movement, an attraction movement, if you want, between the two, but it's never managed to get together. Yeah? So those forces exist within us, and there are boundaries that we have learned to keep them apart, to keep them separated. What shall we do? What is the journey that is left to us? Well, Sangharákshita says, you got to descend into the flames, as Blake would have said, trying to get, and transform them, to walk in, delight in, enjoy, and use the flames, not run away from them. Yeah. So that can be a life story. Yeah, we are moving away from what we don't want to see, the shadow, maybe. That's a way of talking about those forces that have been pushed away from our consciousness by that godlike figure, Urgyen. Yeah? So there's an invitation from Bhante Sangharákshita as well to descend into hell, yeah? To be into the flames. But it's not descending into hell to suffer. Yeah? That's an interesting thing. Yeah? Suffering is not optional. Suffering is going to be there. Unsatisfaction is going to be there. What is optional is the way we relate to that suffering. Yeah? And that quote that I put in the blurb for tonight, about the creative mind. The creative mind can create a heaven in hell, in the despair of hell. The created mind can love where there is no reason to love. So is that going beyond your apparent limitations. So you stretch yourself to the point that you become something bigger. But that might be, you can use many different metaphors for that. You can use a metaphor of growing or climbing, rising up. But in this case, we're using the metaphor of descending. Descending into the entrails of the earth, the underground. But we are not in total darkness. I really like this image. Because that lamp looks to me like the sun. So we saw the sun at the beginning, the Eastern Gate. There is something in us that resonates, is part of the sun. Yeah. There's sunshine within us. So we need just to find the light within us to take us into this journey. And this is another character in this mythology called Los. We're going to see Los in a moment again. So the Los is the personification of this distinctive human quality. And Blake says, I give you the end of a golden string, only wind it into a bowl. It will lead you in at heaven's gate, built in Jerusalem's wall. Yeah. So again, he's playing with those images, isn't it? Jerusalem. I'm going to show you in a moment what he means by Jerusalem. But yeah, it's Jerusalem can be, an ideal place, an ideal city. It doesn't need to be the geographical place. In the Middle East, it can be a place within your imagination, within your heart, if you want. So Los as well is opening the gates that are built in Jerusalem's wall and entering that realm. But Los is really a blacksmith. Yeah. And I love this picture as well. So again, you can see that those two figures, yeah? But the figure above Los is his specter. You can say that is his shadow. Yeah? So Los is a blacksmith, as I said before, and it's interesting. The etymology of the word blacksmith is smithing the black material, and it's heating the black material, yeah? Because that iron, when it cools down, is black. Yeah? So in a way, is this engaging, your creative forces with the dark material. Yeah, I think there is a very famous series of books called like that, Dark Material, and is that transformation of that primordial energy, primordial raw source, of material. Yeah, and Blake says that about Los. So Los is a creator, but the creation is not it's not an easy one. It implies a lot of effort. So Los stands in London. And that's very interesting. I'm going to say a bit more about this in a moment. Los stands in London building Golgonusa, saying, I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. I would not reason and compare. My business is to create. Striving with systems to deliver individuals from those systems. It's a kind of revolutionary, isn't it? The blow of his hammer is justice. The swing of his hammer, mercy. The force of Los' hammer is eternal forgiveness. Forgiveness. That's a very important aspect of this journey. We're going to see that a bit more in a moment. So what is Los trying to build? So he's building something above London. He's building Golgonusa, which is this ideal city. It's like utopia. So this is the person that I was referring to before, Foster Damon, that put together that Blake dictionary, and so he included this map of Golgonoosa. I mean, we don't need to go into too much detail, just to show you that the possibilities in this system of the imagination. Yeah, that's one. And that's lost after creating Golgonoosa. Let's just stay that with that image for a minute. And then this is Albion again, that character that we saw at the beginning, with the lights behind, Albion Rose or Blood Bay. But it's a bit different now, isn't it? Albion has awakened, and in a way has awakened to his full potential. So you see all those figures underneath him. It's sort of I really like this image in terms of it's a nice metaphor to integration. See if I can read this, so you can all read it at home. The sun has left his blackness and has found a fresher morning, and the mild moon rejoices in the clear and cloudless night, and man walks forth from midst of the fires. The evil is all consumed. The expanding eyes of man behold the depths of wondering worlds, and one sun each morning, like a newborn man, issues with songs and joy, calling the plowman to his labor and the shepherd to his rest. He walks upon the eternal mountains, raising in his heavenly voice, conversing with the animal forms of wisdom night and day, that rising from the sea of fire, renew walk over the air. So it's a bit of a redemption arc here. Pretty much the mythology of Blake is about redemption. So the fall is the falling of Albion, which is it's a very rich story in itself. I didn't mention it here, but this is the falling and the re-emergence of Albion. But it's a different Albion. If you want, it's a wiser, more integrated, mature Albion. And what's the key for that? The key is friendship. So Blake says, every kindness to another is a little death in the divine image, nor can man exist but by brotherhood. When souls mingle and join through all the fibers of brotherhood, can there be any secret joy on earth greater than this? And the most sublime act is to set another before you. He also says, mutual forgiveness of each other's vice, such are the gates of paradise. So forgiveness again. So for Blake, that communication with the other is fundamental. So this is an individual journey, yes. And we are looking into the depths of our psyche or our consciousness, yes. But we are not alone in that journey. We're in communication with others. And I realized something that Sangharákshita says in terms of the basis of metta. We did the metta bhavana today. And he talks about the importance of us being able to understand each other. Because most of our difficulties with others is that there is not a real understanding of the other situation. It's very clear between nations or between races or between racial groups, or ideological groups. but it might be more closer to home. Yeah, maybe somebody who is, you know, very close to us, and we constantly fail to understand them. I want to borrow. I've been doing a course on counseling skills, and I found this guy who I really like, and I'm fascinated by his work. He's a psychologist, an American psychologist called Carl Rogers. And his whole thing is about empathy. Yeah. So, by the way, in that bit that I just say from Bhante about the importance of understanding, Bhante says that we need information, we need facts, yeah, objective facts, in order to be able to create understanding. Yeah. And from that understanding emerges sympathy or empathy. Yeah. And from that empathy is the basis of metta. Yeah. So I really like what the way Carl Rogers defines empathy. He says it's the listening to the feelings and emotions that are behind the words, a little bit concealed, that discern a pattern of feeling behind what has been said. Yeah. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're talking about the importance of information, but also, as I said before, literalism is something that we need to be very aware of. So it's not so much about the words, it's what is concealed behind the words. Yeah. And I love this bit. Empathy is entering the private perceptual world of the other and becoming thoroughly at home within it. Yeah. So it's in a way that journey that into the underworld, you know, it's a journey into our own words, but also we can engage in that way with the other, yeah, with the other people's words. And there is a very beautiful poem from Blake. Well, it's more than a poem, actually. Can we see the next one? It's a song. Yeah. So it's there is a very famous collection of songs by Blake called the Songs of Innocence and of Experience. So this is part of the first collection in that book. And it's called The Divine Image. And it's interesting because when we look at metta, really the talk tonight is about metta. So when we look at metta in the Buddhist tradition, we look not just at metta, but metta in contact with different conditions or situations. You know. So in this poem, Blake refers to mercy, pity, peace, and love. And I was thinking, oh, well, those are the Brahma Viharas. I don't know if you have come across the Brahma Viharas, but so the Brahma Viharas are basically metta, or we call it loving kindness or unconditional love. You know, in contact with suffering, in contact with joy or happiness, are in equanimity. Yeah. So you have you can play with that. Yeah. Pity, mercy. So obviously it's very heavily Christian in context, but it's there if you look into it. And I like in the last 4 lines, it says, "Oh, and all must love the human form in heathen, torque, or Jew." Yeah. Obviously, this is politically incorrect nowadays, but it doesn't matter. You understand what he's getting at. Yeah. So the human form, yeah. And what Blake talks about the human form, he's talking about imagination, yeah. The creative powers of all human beings, and that's really there are other famous lines from Blake. Blake talks about the doors of perception. Yeah. So he says, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything will appear to man as it is, infinite. Yeah. So if we are able to not necessarily remove and get rid of our biases and prejudices, but just holding them lightly. If we are able to do that, we'll be able to glimpse at eternity for a moment. So this is about expanding perception. And I was talking at the beginning about the mapping of the psyche. Yeah? And that's what Blake does. He creates a non-mechanistic, subjective map that represents the unfolding of an unconscious project of the core self. Yeah? So the self, obviously, I'm borrowing here from the psychologist language. In Buddhism, we talk about non-self. Yeah? But what we're getting here as self is not necessarily a soul or a fixed entity. Yeah? It's something that is a deeper process that is constantly unfolding and changing. Yeah? So I would like to invite you to listen to something. So we can stop sharing for a moment. And maybe if Kusala Devi is ready, and you want to just sit and relax and close your eyes. So I say that those lines that we just saw a moment ago aren't just poems, are songs. Yeah. So let's listen to that divine image.
To mercy, pity, peace, and love all pray in their distress, and to these virtues of delight return their thankfulness. For mercy, pity, peace, and love is God our Father dear, and mercy, pity, peace, and love is man, his child, and care. For mercy has a human heart, pity a human face, and love the human form divine, and peace the human dress. And every man of every clime who prays in his distress, prays to the human form divine, love, mercy, pity, peace. And all must love the human form in heathen Turk or Jew, where mercy, love, and pity dwell, there God is dwelling too.
Thank you, Kusala Devi. And that was my friend and Blakean mentor, Sacha Lila, who has put some of those poems on songs into actual songs. And I've been doing in these last 5 years. Every year we miss the year of the pandemic, but every year we have tried to do a Blakean retreat in Adhisthana, and I've been attending those retreats. And it's a joy to be with Sacha Lila and Ratnaprabha, who are my Blakean mentors, and just submerging myself into this, this old mythology. So I just want to change something very much more personal. The last few slides before we finish the evening, which is more to do with my personal journey. As obviously I'm not English, so why I do wonder why I respond so strongly to Blake. As Kemasi Riley was. For me, there is something very universal in Blake, though Blake never left London, except for a period of 3 years when he was living in Felpan in the south coast of England, and he was a Londoner basically, but he has this capacity of deep empathy, if you want, with all that live, that was able to imagine a myth that is very human, it's very universal. And in this, I've been a member of the Blake Society for a few years as well, and sometimes we do gatherings, and it's very interesting to see people from all over the world, and all different races and different, very different people, coming together and being touched by Blake. So I want to show you a bit of my personal journey with this. What I'm going to show you is this is a project that I'm working on at the moment, which is 3 images. Let's see the first one. So this is Satan again. This is a different representation of Satan. And it's called Satan exulting over Eve. And you see that dragon or a snake like being, entangled around Eve. Really, she's kind of dead there, comatose, is tangled, really. But there is a succession, there is a progression here that is what I'm interested in. So the next one is called the temptation and fall of Eve, and then there's more of a communion here with the snake. Yeah? So it's a bit of a dialogue again between Eve and the snake. And then the next one. So this is called Eve tempted by the serpent. Yeah? And she is not entangled, she's not trapped by the snake any longer. Yeah? She's free. And I really like this succession of images. Something emerges and wakes again. It's a similar awakening, but this is a female figure. And the reason I really like this is because, well, I'm going to show you something from my room first. The next one. So this is my little Blake shrine in my room. So I have a few books. Some books I have bought myself. Others most of them have been given to me. Others I'm borrowed. So some books from Sachalila, one book from Kemasiri. Yeah? And then yeah, it's sort of a special place, a very special place. I was telling some people in my team here at the center that I have a hole in my wall nowadays, and the sunshine comes in the mornings, and the first thing that the sunshine hits is that shrine, and it's very beautiful because it's all the colors come alive. But I wanted to show you this other thing, which is to do with that image of Eve. This one. So it's a goddess in Venezuela called Marialionsa, and there is in the mythology of this goddess, she is a very central figure in the spirituality of all Venezuelans and other South Americans and Caribbean people. And in the mythology, there are 2 animals that are very central. One is the snake, and the other is the danta. I don't know how you call that in English. Yeah, exactly. Taper, you say taper?
I think so.
Appear, yeah, exactly. That's it, yeah. So she appears sometimes like that, very similar to the way Blake portrays Eve, that woman. And obviously, in this portrait, the snake has been tamed by Marialionsa. But she can be represented also as a virgin, or a queen, as in that representation. And that's the main 3 races, that are our makeup as Venezuelans: the African, the indigenous, and the European. And then the last slide is a personal attempt to bring all those symbols together. So this is me. This was one of my first creations in that one of those Blake retreats. So I call this a return journey. And as Kemasiri rightly pointed out, I'm wearing my double Vajra t-shirt tonight. So one of those symbols, I was talking about these symbols, these images that are hidden in the emotions. Yeah? So those images can be terrible, like the ones that we just saw with Blake, but they can be very creative. And the double budget is one of those images for me. Yeah, this is a very powerful image. I'm not going to say much about it, but you can see all the symbols that we've been exploring so far coming together. So it's a journey. I think the return journey for me is not so much about physically returning to Venezuela, yeah, but it's a coming together of those roots and all those other elements that I'm acquiring, you know, in the unfolding process of my life. And that's it. Thank you for indulging me tonight.
Thank you. Last words. Thank you very much, Aryavacin. Yeah. I feel I've been taken into a mythical journey, or onto a mythical journey. Thank you very much, Aryavacin. It's rich, and it's definitely progressed over the years, definitely. I just also really loved looking at the pictures. So just that, the light, also because they're on screen, they're light, aren't they? It's different when you see them in a book. Yeah, and what stays with me that you say it's about metta tonight, and what is it? The creator, you know, is the creative mind creates love, but there's no reason to love. That's maybe the sentence that stays with me. We might all have different sentences, but what a thing to do. That's Dharma in action. Yeah. So thank you very much. Bye, everybody at home. You can unmute and say goodbye. I can't see people. There they are. Hello.